The tea had gone cold long before he noticed. Daniel sat alone at a small round table near the window of the quiet cafe, his fingers loosely wrapped around a porcelain cup he hadn't lifted in minutes. Outside, the city moved on without him, cars passing, people laughing, lives continuing. Inside, there was only the low hum of conversation and the ache he carried every day. It had been 3 years since his wife, Emily, passed away. 3 years of learning how to wake up without her. 3 years of cooking dinners for one. 3 years of answering the same painful question in his head: why did life choose me for this loneliness? Daniel was a single father, but today, his daughter was staying overnight with her grandparents. The apartment felt too quiet, too empty. So he had come here, ordering tea out of habit, hoping the noise of other people might drown out his thoughts. It didn't. That's when he noticed them. 3 little girls, no older than 6 or 7, sat at the table beside his. They were dressed alike in pale blue dresses, their hair neatly tied back, their shoes swinging above the floor as they whispered and giggled. At first, Daniel smiled faintly. Children always reminded him of the life he used to have. Then one of them looked at him. She stared openly, her wide eyes fixed on his face. When Daniel met her gaze, she didn't look away. Instead, she leaned toward the other two and whispered something urgently. The girls huddled together, hands covering their mouths. Daniel looked back down at his tea, slightly uncomfortable. Maybe he reminded them of someone. Maybe he just looked strange sitting alone in a cafe, lost in his thoughts. But then, all 3 chairs scraped softly against the floor. The girls stood up. Before Daniel could react, they stepped closer, small shoes tapping nervously. They stopped right beside him, exchanging one last glance with each other, as if gathering courage. And then one of them whispered, "Mister, are you lonely?" The question hit him harder than he expected. Daniel blinked, unsure how to respond. He cleared his throat. Well, I suppose everyone is sometimes. The girl tilted her head, studying him seriously. "You look like my daddy used to," she said softly. The word "used to" made his chest tighten. Before he could ask what she meant, another girl whispered, "We think you're sad." The third girl nodded. "And sad people shouldn't drink tea alone." Daniel let out a quiet, surprised laugh. It was the first genuine laugh he'd had in weeks. "Well," he said gently, lowering his cup, "what do you suggest I do instead?" The girls exchanged excited looks. "You should smile," one said. "You should talk," said another. "And you should remember," the third added, almost solemnly. "Remember what?" Daniel asked. She leaned closer, her voice barely audible. "Remember that someone still needs you." Daniel felt his throat close. Before he could reply, a woman hurried over from the counter, her face pale with worry. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly. "They wandered off. I hope they didn't bother you." Daniel shook his head. "No. Not at all." The woman smiled awkwardly and reached for the girls' hands. "Come on, sweethearts. Let's go back." But the first girl resisted. She looked up at Daniel one last time. "My daddy went away forever," she whispered. "But my mommy says he still lives in my heart." She placed her small hand over Daniel's chest. "Maybe your someone does too." And then they were gone. Daniel sat frozen, staring at the empty space where they had stood. Something inside him cracked open. He hadn't realized how tightly he had been holding his grief, how heavy it had become. For years, he had convinced himself that moving on meant forgetting. That smiling meant betraying Emily's memory. But maybe he was wrong. Maybe remembering didn't mean suffering forever. Daniel lifted his teacup again, but this time, he took a sip. It was still warm. That evening, when he returned home, he didn't turn on the television. He didn't sit in silence. Instead, he opened a drawer he hadn't touched in years and pulled out an old photo album. He sat on the couch, flipping through memories, Emily laughing, their daughter taking her first steps, the life they built together. And for the first time, the memories didn't crush him. They comforted him. The next morning, Daniel picked up his daughter early. She ran into his arms, wrapping herself around his neck. "Daddy," she said, pulling back to look at him. "You're smiling." He kissed her forehead. "Yes, sweetheart. I am." Later that day, as they sat together drinking tea at the kitchen table, Daniel realized something profound. He wasn't alone. He had never truly been alone. Grief had blinded him to the love still surrounding him, the love waiting for him to notice, to accept, to live again. And somewhere in the city, 3 little girls continued whispering secrets, unknowingly changing lives.